We have targets, Newcastle facing unique January transfer challenge. At least Eddie Howe has retained his sense of humor. If we signed everyone we've been linked with we'd end up with a squad of around 1,000 players, reflected Newcastle's manager as he surveyed the gap between appearance and reality. Howe finds himself in charge at St James Park at the strangest of moments. Over the next month Newcastle are expected to establish themselves as football's biggest paradox, theoretically the world's wealthiest club yet currently an extremely hard sell to the planet's best players. Admittedly Kieran Trippier, an England right-back, could arrive from Atletico Madrid as early as next week after talks between his representatives and Newcastle over activating the £31 million release clause in the 31-year-old's La Liga contract reached an advanced stage in recent days, but that potential deal looks a bit of an outlier. While Trippier is apparently keen on a reunion with Howe, the manager who once signed him for Burnley, and seems enthusiastic about relocating to Tyneside, other players of similar caliber may take more persuading. This is much less about geography. Those who tend to roll their eyes in horror at the idea of living in the northeast have frequently never actually visited the region than league position. Money invariably serves as a talent magnet, but there are exceptions to every rule, and no club as rich as Newcastle has previously found itself floundering in the Premier League's relegation zone at New Year, after recording only one win during the entire first half of a season. Given that the club's new Saudi Arabian-led owners bought the club from Mike Ashley in October and Howe replaced Steve Bruce as recently as November, the new regime cannot be blamed for the current disconnect yet must somehow conjure the quickest of quick fixes. Newcastle's manager appreciates there are no guarantees he will be able to conduct sufficiently extensive repair work by 1 February. "We're under no illusions," said Howe, who hopes to have at least Trippier in his starting eye for forthcoming relegation six-pointers against Watford and Leeds. "There's no promises about what we can and can't do, but work's going on behind the scenes to try and make things happen, to try and bring players here. We have targets we've identified between myself, the coaching team and the recruitment team, and we have a big body of people working on the club's behalf to try and find a way to strengthen the squad." A lot of details gone into that, but you can have the most detailed process in the world, yet if players don't want to come to your team, or clubs don't want to sell them, the challenge of January becomes very difficult. It hardly helps that, as yet, Newcastle have not filled their vacancies for a director of football and chief executive, although Nick Hammond, who previously filled the former role at Reading, is on board as a short-term consultant, and Steve Nixon, Ashley's old head of recruitment, remains in post. Nixon was the man responsible for driving Newcastle's £40 million capture of Joelinton from Hoffenheim in 2019. While the Brazilian is now excelling as a midfielder and appears reborn under Howe's tutelage, he was signed as a centre-forward. Significantly, it did not take long for Bruce to emphasize that the most expensive acquisitions are not necessarily always the safest transfer market bets, by explaining that the record signing was not really that interested in scoring goals. Maximizing due diligence and minimizing transfer market mistakes is Howe's immediate challenge, but this task has been complicated by the need to not only repair a sieve-like defense, but replace his key striker, Callum Wilson, who is likely to be sidelined by a torn calf for around 2 months. Although Howe would prefer to recruit an established Premier League number 9, there is a tacit acceptance he will almost certainly need to import one from abroad. Before Wilson's injury, the manager's shopping list was defender-heavy. While the Sheffield United midfielder Sander Berge and his Tottenham counterpart Harry Winks have been monitored, the principal focus has centered on hiring not only Trippier, but at least 2 new centre-halves from a list topped by Lille's much-admired Netherlands international Sven Botman, Manchester City's Nathan Ake, Bournemouth's Lloyd Kelly, Liverpool's Nat Phillips, Burnley's James Tarkowski and Brentford's Pontus Jansson. A possible loan move for Tottenham's Joe Rodon represents another option. Despite Newcastle playing down suggestions that rival clubs fiercely opposed to the Saudi takeover, including, perhaps most notably, Spurs, could well decline to take transfer-related calls from St James Park, it remains hard to envisage Burnley selling Tarkowski to a fellow relegation struggler. Moreover, the board's initial hopes of spending no more than £50 million before February appear increasingly fanciful. Not surprisingly, agents are swarming chaotically around a perceived honeypot, leaving Amanda Staveley, the director who runs Newcastle on a daily basis, besieged by a queue of player representatives wanting to become her best friend before charging her top dollar. By way of further complication, every decision has to be agreed with Staveley's co-owners, the British-based Jamie Rubin and the powerful Saudi-domiciled chairman Yasser Al Rumayyan, who represents the kingdom's majority shareholders, the Public Investment Fund, PIF. There remains a clear consensus about one thing though: when it comes to transfers, there is a price for Newcastle and another, more modest, rate for everyone else. Potential sellers are acutely aware that financial fair play rules could permit the St James Park hierarchy to spend almost £200 million in January and seem determined to hold the Saudis to ransom. A high-stakes game of who blinks first beckons.